This is Caroline from Katybrook, LLC. So after my first video, I realized that talking by yourself into a camera is really, really hard. And so I've invited my friend Tootie Tatum here to actually interview me and ask me questions about the business acquisition endeavor that I'm starting. So Tootie, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Tootie. I'm Caroline's friend. We went to business school together, and we have become much better friends even since that time. And yeah, I'm super curious about what she's doing and how this is all going to work. So I had lots of questions, and so we kind of thought, what a great opportunity to go ahead and have me be able to ask her those questions, but be able to record those things as well, so we can share those with everyone here. With that,
Yeah, you want to get started? All right,
absolutely.
Ask away.
Yeah. Okay. So I know there has been one video already posted.
Yes.
So you kind of give me the overview of what you're doing, and so I recommend everyone like and subscribe, as everybody has to do on YouTube. But that kind of gives the background. But I guess just fundamentally for those people who maybe haven't seen that video, what are you doing, and why are you doing it?
Okay, so basically what I'm doing is I'm going to be buying a business. So I'm acquiring a business, and I've run two businesses already, but this is a little different in that I'm not actually working for a startup this time. My goal is to buy a business that is already cash flow positive, which has already become profitable and has a stable business that has run long enough that I can take it over and continue the success it's already had.
So I don't know that like most people think about whenever they think, oh, I'm going to start a business, that they think, oh, I'll just go buy a business. So I was kind of surprised that this was a thing. And I guess my first question is, why would somebody want to sell a business that was cash flow positive? Like, they've got a good business, and why do they want to sell it to you? Because, I mean, that might be a silly question because we live in Silicon Valley, and obviously everybody sells things all the time, and that's the whole deal. That's not the kind of business we're talking about here. We're talking about more of a classical type of a business, not a giant software unicorn or anything like that. So that's the first thing. And then how do you even find a business like that? How does that process work?
Yeah, so I think one of the issues is when we were in business school, it got overlooked. And I think part of it, as you mentioned, is because we are very close to the Valley. And so when people think entrepreneurship, they always think of, oh, let me start a business. And that's what we're surrounded by. But in fact, this is a long existing thing where you have people who are selling their businesses for various reasons, and we'll get into that. And this is another method of entrepreneurship, and it's called entrepreneurship through acquisition. So you're buying a business, but you still become that business owner. You still have to run the business very much like you would a startup. The nice thing, though, is that most startups fail. I think the percentage is like 95% of businesses fail within the first year. So, and having spent my entire career working in startups, buying a business which is already profitable is great because you're not enduring that type of risk. You know that is a stable business, that it has created revenue, and so it's sort of a less, in my opinion, less risky than starting completely from new. To address your question about why are people selling their cash flow positive businesses, I like thinking about this a lot in terms of home ownership. In that, why do people sell their homes? Well, things happen in life. First of all, in terms of business, what's happening right now is a large population of baby boomers is starting to retire. So because they want to retire, they may want to then sell the businesses that they've been running successfully. So that's number one. But there are also things that just happen in life. People get sick. There are deaths. There are changes in life, and you have to move. And these are all reasons why someone might want to get rid of their business.
So do you just like go on Craigslist and look for businesses, or like how do you find out about it? Because I can see where if like whenever I think of a classical business, a restaurant comes to mind.
Yeah.
And often, there's a high turnover rate in that. And, family restaurants everybody loves go out of business. They're getting old. So you can hit them up because you go in there and you drink your margaritas and you say, oh, hey, I'd love to buy your restaurant. But the vast majority of businesses are kind of hidden, I guess. And so I'm kind of wondering how do you like, is there literally a place that you can go and search, or do you just talk to people and find stuff out, or?
Yeah, so there are two ways of searching. One way is exactly what you're saying is if there's a business that you like and you can approach a business owner and be like, hey, I like your business, would you want to sell it to me, that kind of process. That process is more work intensive and risky because those people are not necessarily in the mindset of, hey, I want to get rid of my business. So I mentioned that I like thinking about this a lot like home ownership or real estate. And that's exactly the case with businesses, is that when businesses want to sell, they utilize brokers. And so these people are very much like a broker in real estate who's trying to help along the process of selling that business. And brokers will list all these businesses for sale. So I think the most popular website that I've seen is BuyBizSell or bizbuysell.com. There are many other websites, but just like in real estate, when you're buying a home, your broker isn't always going to be the best broker. So part of it is kind of sifting through the brokers that you do want to work with.
So are these brokers, are they industry specific, or are they geographically specific, or are they just any old thing? I mean,
Both.
Is it, okay.
Yeah, so the way I've been searching personally is I have decided in terms of my business profile that I want to find businesses located in the Southwest, basically Nevada and Arizona. Mm-hmm. So in those cases, I'm searching geographically. So I look for brokers who are in that state or in that city, and then reach out and contact them for their listings, or if they know of any businesses that are coming up for sale. But if you don't care so much about the location and you're looking for a specific profile of business, there are also brokers that specifically deal in, for example, franchises or medical sales, or in your case, lab sales, accredited lab sales. Mm-hmm. So there are lots of different types of brokers.
So is that the path you're exclusively using right now, is a broker to look for a business?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm exclusively using a broker to search for a business because they're working with people who are already motivated to sell. If you've already contacted a broker, you've already, created a listing and turn over that information, that means, I am in the market to sell my business, ideally.
Okay. So do those brokers, so if, we use the analogy of real estate brokers, and I think
Mm-hmm.
about most people are familiar with, residential real estate brokers. They're going to preview houses for you as equivalent, right? So do these people preview businesses? Do they put together a portfolio of options for you to look at? What do their commissions look like? How does that look? I mean, what should you expect? And what services do they provide to you? Do they look at the books? Do they do any kind of due diligence? What's a good broker?
So that's the range of services, and I'm very early in this process right now, so I am personally still trying to figure it out. So number one, in terms of payment, yes, it's commission based, and much like in real estate, the seller is the one who pays the commission,
okay,
not the buyer. So that's very nice. The other thing is yes, brokers vary by all types. And even in the few weeks that I've been working on this and contacting brokers, I've really realized it runs the gamut. And you got to figure out who are the ones that you want to work with. So some really good ones I've seen, when you're interested in a particular listing, and brokers have listings, much like real estate brokers also have listings of homes that's selling, these business brokers also have listings of businesses they're selling. So if you are interested in a particular one, the really good ones put together a really nice packet for you that tells you about the business, some of the financials, not a lot initially, who works with the business, just various things like that.
What's the overall process? Like, kind of, in broad strokes, step one is to decide you want to buy a business. What are the next 4 steps, 5 steps? Kind of, how does that lay out? What does that look like for somebody?
Yeah, I think step one is, okay, I've decided that this is a fit for my lifestyle. That's what I want to do. And then step 2, I think a lot of people, step 2 is you go online and you start looking at business listings. I didn't do that. My step 2 was reading books and doing research on what the process was to buy a business and what it really took. So I wanted to understand that process before I started looking at all these listings. So for me, I read several books that were helpful to me and talked about the process. But basically, number 1 is defining what type of business that you're trying to get into. What industry are you going to utilize your own skills? A lot of the companies that you might buy, you may need to be an active manager. So you may need to move depending on where you're located. So, kind of coming up with the basics parameters of the type of business that you want to buy. And then you can get really into it in terms of, okay, how am I going to fund the business? And if I'm going to fund it this way, how am I going to pay for it? And also, how much funding do I have access to? Because that will dictate how much you can actually spend on buying a business. And when you look at listings, those are some of the big things. Is you look at the listing price, and you're like, oh, can I afford this or not? Depending on my financial profile. So at the very beginning, that's kind of like what I would have to establish for myself. It's like, okay, what industry type of business am I looking for? Well, how much money does it need to make? And then how much revenue does it need to make? And how much can I actually afford to buy? So figuring those out first before you start going online and clicking on listings was really helpful to me.
So I can see where any of those three things you just mentioned, like how much money does it cost to purchase this business, what is the industry, or how much does it make? I can see where any of those might be somebody's primary criterion depending upon what direction they're coming at those. Are those rank ordered in your mind? And if so, what does that order look like and why did you order them in that way?
I mean, I think number one is how much can I afford to spend on a business? Because if you can't afford to spend beyond a certain point, so if you can't buy a $500,000 business, then you shouldn't even be looking at listings for businesses that cost less than that. Again, I equate it to home buying. It's like, how much house can I afford?
And so, how do you know how much you can afford?
So that's a great question. And that goes back to how am I going to pay for this business? Mm-hmm. So in terms of how I'm going to pay for my business is I plan to fund it primarily through an SBA loan. Okay. And the SBA loan will fund about 90% of the purchase price. The additional 10% is funded through either private investor or yourself. Mm-hmm. So if I decide to fund it myself, I know how much I can afford, how much cash I can afford to put in the business, with the other 90% being covered by an SBA loan. I can attempt to find a private investor, which is also something I can work with, and I can think in my head, how much do I think I can actually raise from a private investor? Oh, maybe I can raise like $100,000 from a private investor. If the other 90% is an SBA loan, then I can afford to buy a business up to $1 million.
So thinking about the private investors, how does somebody find a private investor? Is this like, I mean, you say private investor, I mean, it could be your mom, or it could be a business contact from a previous, I mean, so what have you made a list of those people, or do you have a preference on how that's going to work? What's your comfort level with that? This is a second question, just kind of a follow-up. I know for myself, because my company was completely bootstrapped, and for those of you that are not business people, that means it's on you, it's all your money, you don't borrow anything, and your success or failure is 100% yours. It also means that you don't burn through your parents' retirement savings on your really cool beatboxing business that you decided to go into. So that's a personal decision. A lot of people I know don't like that. Are you of the mind that you're going to fund yourself out of your own pocket for that other 10%, or what's that mix look like, or who would be the people you would first approach?
Yeah, so I know this is very common, and when you're starting your own startup and you're a small business, we do what's called a friends and family round, right? Mm-hmm. You approach your friends and family first for the funding, before you raise any capital outside of it from outside investors. In this case, I would like, because I don't plan on just buying one business, I plan on buying multiple businesses. But for this very first business, I would like to attempt to self-fund it. And the reason why I want to do that is I want to have a proven record of success that I've gone through this, which when I go out to private investors later on gives me a better position that says, I've already done this once, here's 6 months of revenue or success or whatever we've done within that 6-month period, before I ask anyone for money.
Okay. You just said something that I didn't realize, and it kind of blew me away. You said that you intend to own multiple businesses?
Yep.
So is this this path you're taking, like, is this the second half of your life now in your mind? Like, this is what you're going to do from now on, is own multiple businesses? Or are these going to be in series, or are they in parallel, or how does that work? Because I envision it as, okay, I'm going to look for the first business, but it sounds like you have a much bigger idea in the longer term about what this looks like. So how does that journey look for you, and do you have a timeline that you put in place for, or some goals personally for how that's going to lay out?
Yeah, so I would ideally like to own several businesses, and the area that I'm targeting right now are elder care services.
Okay.
So I'm not specifically going after a specific business within the elder care. I'm trying to find the right service business that fits the profile that I've decided to build myself.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is to buy additional businesses that are also kind of feed into that care pattern, service pattern for elder care. And hopefully, you continue to run it, and you can run it passively by hiring a GM. So I'm not actively managing each business every single day. And then you're withdrawing income from each business.
Mm-hmm.
Or what I would also do is to sell them as a roll-up at some point to maybe private equity.
Okay. So, that way overused adage of going faster, going far, are you considering business partners? And if so, how many? What would be the skill sets they would bring along? Kind of talk about that.
Yeah, so I have one business partner right now who is our business classmate,
Mm-hmm.
Dave Dietrich. And Dave is great because his background is in finance and accounting. And one thing I will tell anybody is that I am great. I am totally good at reading a financial statement and understanding the numbers. I can't build it from scratch. I can't take it apart. So it's definitely a weakness of mine. So it's great to have Dave working with me because that's his strength.
How do you know it's the right fit as a business partner? And how did you guys kind of negotiate who had strengths in one area versus the other? And what does that division of effort look like right now for you guys?
Yeah, I think, first of all, it's sort of a natural fit, understanding, okay, what am I good at, which is operations. I've run 2 businesses, so I know I can do those things, and what Dave is good at. I think it also happens to be a coincidental, we're kind of at the same point in our lives where we're looking to do something different,
Mm-hmm.
rather than spending our time and days working for someone else, and putting the 40 hours a week into, have a normal clock in, clock out job. We both are really looking for something different in our lives, so that just happened to work out between the 2 of us. I think we're still delineating the division of labor, but because I'm currently unemployed and spending my time searching for business to purchase, I can do the vast majority of searching, contacting, reaching out to brokers. That's really on me on a day-to-day basis right now.
Okay, so you guys are aligned in terms of the prioritization of selection of the business because, as you said earlier, you're looking at the total cost of the thing you would acquire. Is that also the way that he is approaching it? Or does he have other preferences that would also weigh into the decision-making process for ultimately what you guys choose?
I mean, I think for me, I'm reviewing the deals first, and I will look at a deal and I was like, okay, does this fit the minimum requirements that was set forward? And if it does, then I'd boot it over to Dave and be like, what do you think of this business opportunity? And then we'll discuss it and kind of see is this something we want to pursue? Or we'll get additional information from the broker, review that, and be like, okay, is this a good opportunity or is this not?
Okay. And so I guess, the benefit there obviously is you have somebody else to bring capital to the picture and maybe another network of people to help raise some money if that's what you needed to do.
Yeah, and what's nice is Dave and I work in 2 very different industries.
Mm-hmm.
My background has been in food CPG and cannabis for the last 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Dave has also worked in food when he was at Sprouts, but it's different, a very different profile in terms of background. So it does expand your network, which is very helpful.
Okay.